Hey, I'm Amanda, and this is The Middle of It, a podcast about the messy but beautiful in between parts of life. You know that feeling when you're waiting for someone to tell you you did the right thing? For me, it almost feels like panic, like a tightening in my chest, this anxious need to know, was that okay? Did I handle that right? I'll go to Alex or my mom or even my kids looking for that pat on the back. And sometimes I get it. But when I don't, or when the feedback is, well, maybe you could have done it differently, that's when everything spirals. Suddenly, it's not just feedback, it's disapproval. It's me deciding I'm not good enough. And it's not about them. It's me. It's me looking for constant validation that no one else can possibly keep up with. I've been doing this since I was a kid. I grew up being told constantly, Amanda's so cute. She's so smart. She's such a good girl. She's doing such great things. Teachers, parents, grandparents, everyone built me up. And in some ways, that sounds wonderful, right? But the flip side is, I started to feel like I had to live up to that pedestal. The truth was, I didn't always feel so smart. I didn't always feel so good. I knew my flaws. And so I kept looking for more and more external reminders that I was still worthy of being up there. Now, maybe your story looks different. Maybe you didn't get validation as a kid. Maybe you got nothing. No good job. No, I'm proud of you. Just silence or indifference. And when that's the case, as adults, we can end up chasing validation everywhere we can find it. Did you grow up being put on a pedestal, or did you grow up with silence? Or maybe both? How do you see that showing up in your patterns today? We live in a world that feeds this hunger nonstop. Partners, parents, bosses, and the biggest one of all, social media. How many times have you posted something and then checked it over and over to see how people are responding? One like, five likes, no comments. And suddenly your brain is telling you it's not good enough. It wasn't impressive enough. I don't measure up. It happens at work too. I've caught myself bringing things to my boss, not just to update her, but because I want that pat on the back. And look, recognition is important. We should acknowledge each other's contributions. But when my sense of worth depends on hearing great job, that's the trap. Validation works like a sugar high, or more like caffeine. You get that quick hit. Yes, I feel good. I can keep going. But then it fades and you need more and more. And eventually you crash even lower than before. Sounds a little bit like a drug, right? That's how alcohol worked for me too. It was fake validation. It told me, you're fun, you're confident, you're okay. But the end result was always emptiness. Because when you constantly hand out your worth for other people or even substances to decide on, you eventually run out. Where in your life are you chasing that caffeine high of validation, knowing it'll crash later? Social media, a partner's approval, maybe your boss's recognition. Since I mentioned social media, let's talk about it because it's one of the biggest validation traps out there. Scrolling is like holding up a distorted mirror. It's not real life, but our brains still compare. She's further along than me. He's got more than I do. Their marriage looks perfect. Their kids look happy all the time. And before you know it, you're setting impossible expectations for yourself. That's the trap. Social media creates not just validation chasing, but also expectation setting. I expect my life to look like theirs. I expect my recovery to look like hers. I expect my relationship to have the same picture perfect glow as the one I saw in that reel. And what happens? I end up disappointed. I end up resentful. I end up empty. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I looked into a broken mirror and believed it was telling me the truth. Now, there's another cousin of validation we need to talk about: people pleasing. This is when I say yes when I want to say no. It's when I agree to do something I don't want to do because the thought of disappointing feels unbearable. So here's the tricky part: people pleasing often comes with a hidden expectation. If I do this for you, you'll validate me in some way in return. But when they don't gush with thanks or make me feel important, now I'm resentful. So it's the same cycle: validation to expectation to resentment, just dressed up as kindness. So, where are you saying yes when you mean no? And what expectation are you attaching to that yes? Here's the thing about expectations: most of the time, we don't even know we're carrying them until they get crushed. Take relationships, for example. Say I have a date night coming up, and in my head, I've already written a whole script. He's going to plan something special. There's going to be flowers, dinner reservations, holding the door open, maybe even candles. He'll make me feel loved in this exact way. And then he doesn't. He orders takeout and throws on Netflix with a smile. And what do? Not just disappointment, rejection, because my unspoken script didn't play out. But here's the kicker: I never told him the script. He didn't even have a copy of it. So, how the hell was he supposed to follow it? Friends are the same. I'm throwing a party and everyone's going to come. Or I've heard from other people, I've asked her to be in my wedding and I can't believe she said no. Here's the truth: you are not the main character in other people's stories. They have their own priorities going on: work, kids, finances, stress. And sometimes their no has nothing to do with us. So let's talk about driving. I don't even know if I want to go there, but we expect everyone else to drive the way we do. That person better not cut me off. They better start speeding up. Or "Ugh, he didn't use his blinker." And then when they don't, we're fuming. But maybe they just got a call that their kid's in the ER. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital. Maybe their world is falling apart. And I'm over here assuming their entire existence is about making my drive easier or getting me to my destination on time when I should have left earlier in the first place. The problem with expectations is they're invisible landmines. We plant them without telling anyone. And then we get angry when someone steps on them and they didn't even know they were there. And in recovery, there's this saying: expectations are resentments waiting to happen. And it's so true, because when I expect people to behave a certain way without ever saying it out loud, I'm basically writing the script for my own disappointment. Now, let me tell you one of my favorite pieces of Dr. Phil wisdom. And listen, say what you want about him, but this one is gold. He says the word but is really just code for forget everything I just said. This is what I really mean. Like if I say, I love you, but you can erase the I love you because everything after the but is the truth. And people get slick with it. They think they can dress it up. However, nope, just a fancy but with all due respect. Now that is a butt in a tuxedo. Same thing. And we do it with expectations too. We'll say, I don't mind what we do for date night. However, or it's fine, but, and suddenly we've laid down an expectation without owning it. Think of the last time you dropped a fancy but. You said it's fine, but, or whatever. What was the real expectation behind it? Did the other person even know it existed? Let me tell you, from this point forward, you're never going to be able to say but without thinking about this again. Here's the truth. Unspoken expectations are relationship killers. And I don't just mean romantic relationships, friendships, coworkers, family. They all suffer under the weight of invisible scripts. So here's a little experiment. Tomorrow, pay attention to how many expectations you carry without voicing them. Notice when you get annoyed, when you feel disappointed, when you think they should have known. That's an expectation. Write it down because the first step to breaking the cycle is just acknowledging it. I see this whole validation expectation cycle so clearly in parenting. I'll tell my kids, great try. And they'll roll their eyes like, what? So I didn't do it perfectly? And I'm like, no, you did great, but there's still room for improvement. And honestly, it makes me think about how different parenting was in the 80s and 90s. Our parents were just starting to get the whole build your kids up memo. Before that, it was more like feed them, keep them alive, and tell them to go outside. But by the time we were kids, they were all into these new ideas like tell your child they're special, tell them they can do anything, boost their self esteem. So I got a lot of praise, like I said, pedestal level praise. Amanda's so smart. Amanda's so good. And don't get me wrong, it felt good, but it also set me up to expect it everywhere. And let's be real, 90s parenting had this funny split personality. On one hand, we were all getting participation trophies, like, you kicked the ball once in soccer, here's a medal. And on the other hand, if you scraped your knee, the answer was rub some dirt on it. Like, which is it? Am I fragile and in need of constant cheering, or am I supposed to just toughen up and get back to it? The mix was confusing. And I think for a lot of us, it set this weird pattern. I need to be praised constantly, but I also need to act like I don't need anything. And now, as parents, we're trying to untangle all of that. I don't want my kids to think they're only worthy when they're perfect. But I also don't want to raise little trophy hunters who melt down if they don't get applause every 5 minutes. So I try to focus on effort. You kept practicing, you didn't give up, you worked so hard. It's not easy because our kids are growing up in a world of constant feedback, likes, comments, views. So, great try doesn't always cut it. But I really believe effort over perfection is the key. So, think about how you were raised. Were you a rub some dirt on it kind of kid, or a here's your participation trophy kid? And how does that show up in the way you talk to yourself now? Because at the end of the day, parenting is a mirror. It shows us exactly what we haven't healed. Every time my kids roll their eyes at me, every time they want the gold star instead of the great try, I see myself in them. And it reminds me this work doesn't stop, it just passes on if I don't do it. So, how do we break this cycle of validation to expectations to resentments? First, notice the projection, that voice that says, I just know he won't do it the way I want. No, you don't know that. And if you're convinced you do, then say something. Be part of the solution instead of silently setting someone up to fail. Second, communicate. Instead of landmines, set people up for success. Tell your partner, it would mean so much if you planned something special. Tell your friend, I miss you. Can we talk more? That's not weakness, that's clarity. Third, and most importantly, validate yourself. Gratitude journaling isn't just about sunsets and coffee and hot water heaters that turn on. Try making it about you, right? I'm proud of the way I handled that conversation today. I'm grateful I've stayed consistent in my parenting. I'm glad I kept showing up at work and up at home. Affirm yourself. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of respect. And I can ask for what I need. And then get honest. Do an inventory. Were you short tempered and with whom? Where do you expect things from others that you don't give back? Write it down. Look at it in the light. If you're listening right now and you're not driving, grab a pen. Write down one expectation you've been carrying this week. Maybe it's about your partner, a friend, or a coworker, and ask yourself, did I actually tell them this? Were they even aware that this was my expectation? Is it fair? Or am I setting them up for failure? Now flip the page over and write, what can I do to be part of the solution? Take a minute. Pause the podcast if you need to. Write it down and sit with it. Now, I don't want you to hear all of this and think, well, then I just won't show up for anybody. They can figure it out themselves. No, that's not the point. Showing up for others doesn't mean you're fueling their validation trap. Being present for people you love is not enabling, it's kindness. It's being part of community. And you have no right to make an assumption of what it is that they're going through when it comes to validation and expectations anyway. When you show up for a friend who's grieving or you cheer someone on when they succeed, you're not filling their gap. You're being supportive. The difference is whether you're doing it also from a place of needing something back or doing it freely out of love. And honestly, that's the heart of recovery too. Service isn't about validation, it's about connection. So, validation in recovery is a big one because recovery itself can get tangled with validation if we're not careful. Think about chips. They're not meant to be validation, they're reminders. They're mile markers of our own journey. But if we're not careful, they can start to feel like performance. Like, if I don't pick up a chip, I've failed. That's not the point. Or sponsors and sponsees. Healthy accountability means being honest, being willing, teachable. But sometimes it can slip into validation. Do you think I did this right? Do you think I'm working the steps correctly? Am I doing enough? The truth is, recovery isn't about constant pats on the back. It's about action. Faith without works is dead. And freedom doesn't come from someone else saying, good job. It comes from doing the work day after day. So, where are you confusing accountability with validation in your recovery? How could you lean more on action and honesty and less on approval? Here's a reminder I want to leave you with. Everyone longs to be seen. That's not weakness. That's just being human. But when we hand out the job of making us enough to other people, we're always setting ourselves up for disappointment. We have to be enough for ourselves. The more we validate ourselves, the less we need to script the people around us. That's where freedom lives, not in controlling how people show up, but in letting relationships breathe. And let me be clear, I am not saying this as someone who's mastered it. I still catch myself looking for validation every single day. This podcast isn't me standing here with all the boxes checked. It's my reminder to myself, right alongside you, of the work I still need to do. So thank you for being here. Thank you for walking this road with me. And remember, you're not broken. You're just in the middle of it. And the middle is where the work happens. Until next time, keep going.